Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session. My name is Abe Karar, and I am a partner at Fintech Galaxy, leading the digital transformation work and advisory work. And I'm very pleased to be with you this afternoon and accompanied by my colleague, Daniel, who is one of our technical experts supporting the Fintech Galaxy and Phoenix 22 Sandbox environment. And the objective of today is really to provide an overview on how you could leverage the Phoenix 22 Sandbox in order to test and prototype. The nice thing about this platform, just at a very high level, before I pass it on to Daniel, is that it does come with a comprehensive set of APIs, now accounting for over 300. It also comes with synthesized data sets that cover, banks, accounts, transactions, etc. And these data sets have been localized so they can simulate data across some of the most active fintech countries such as the UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. And obviously, as Daniel will go through, you'll see that there is an API Explorer that provides you all the definitions with some code snippets and some examples. So I feel that this is going to be of tremendous value as you go through this the journey of this hackathon. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Daniel, and you guys can see him on the video, and he will walk you through and provide you some examples, and then he will field any questions that you have on how you could really optimize the use of the sandbox. Thank you so much, and over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Abe, very much for the introduction and a warm welcome from my side as well. So as Abe already said, I'm Daniel from Tesobe. Tesobe is the company Berlin-based behind the Open Bank project, and so we developed the Open Bank project as an API platform for financial institutes and fintechs. And yeah, so we set up a sandbox here for Phoenix 22. Like Abe already said, this is an API sandbox, so we have the full set of Open Bank project APIs available here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through basically the your developer journey, so how you can like onboard to the sandbox, register yourself, get API keys, and start calling these APIs. So I'm not completely aware of your current level of experience with the sandbox already. So I've been told that most of you already are using it and have started exploring it. So if there's anything, if I'm going to tell too much of what you already know, or you want a quick dive, then just ping me on the chat. I have the chat open. Also, I'd like this to be a very, very hands-on workshop. So if you have any questions or any problems, any issues you're struggling with at the moment, just please let me know in the chat. I will pick it up from there and talk you through, so that you can make the most out of this sandbox and benefit from the APIs and develop your apps and bring your ideas to life. This is what we want to achieve today. So right, so assuming that you already know the sandbox, just a very brief introduction. This is the portal page. I hope you can all see the screen. This is the portal page. This is the first page you will see when you go to the sandbox. It gives a very brief introduction. Here's a very small how to get started. Create an account, connect your app, get an API key, and then test your app using the APIs with the customer data that's on the sandbox. As Abe already said, we have quite some data on the sandbox, which is localized. So it's banking data on the sandbox you can work with. So banking data means we have customers, we have accounts, and we have transactions. So and this is synthetic data, so it's not real data, but it's very much similar to real data. So it is based on real data, but anonymized and synthesized. So you can work with this data as if it were just real banking data in a real bank. Right. So when you scroll down, you have an overview of the catalog of APIs which are there, grouped in categories. So APIs for account, transactions, metadata, custom onboarding, KYC, which is of particular importance because it's one of the three themes of this hackathon, and I will give some examples about this in a minute. Then what also is very helpful to you as developers is that we have some SDK showcases here. This is example code in a variety of programming languages and development environments. You can check them out. Most of them are just links to GitHub repositories. So just go there and have a look at the code and see and understand how it's working. You can take it from there, start developing your apps with the examples. These are working code examples. Right, so there's a few frequently asked questions here, and I would highly suggest that you get on our Slack channel. So we have a Slack space where I'm hanging out, and most of our developers are. So if you have any issues, any questions, or want to just say hi and welcome, whatever, yeah, just come to the Slack channel and reach out. The link should be somewhere here. No, it's not here. I think, yeah, we share in the chat in a second. Right. Okay. So this is the portal page. The API, the Sandbox comes with a number of apps that we also develop, and which are supplementary apps which come along with Open Bank project. And one of the major apps is the API Explorer. So you probably have seen it already. You can just click on the link here. It will point you to it, or also from the catalog. So if you click on one of these links from the API catalog, it will also throw you directly to the API Explorer, which is this here. Yeah, the API Explorer, as you probably have seen already, on the left, in the left column, you have a catalog of all the API endpoints which are there. So at the moment, we have a total of 321 APIs available. Again, they are grouped in categories here. And so this is basically, so the API Explorer should be your central toolbox where you have an overview, where you can explore all APIs which are there and find the right ones that you need to get your ideas going, to get off the ground. And yeah, so it's not only to explore and to find out, but also to try out. So directly from the API Explorer, you can make actual API calls. So just a very simple example. Let's try the get banks endpoint. This is a very simple endpoint. You don't need to be authenticated for it. You can just, this will just return the banks which are available on this sandbox. So this will point already to the banking data which is on this sandbox. So when you click on one of the endpoints on the left, you will jump to the endpoint here, and there you have the resource doc. So this is a general introduction and brief documentation about the endpoint, about every particular endpoint. So it gives you an explanation what the endpoint does. It shows you here the URL that you need to call. So this is the plus the API host name, which is this well, rather long string, Phoenix22 platform, and then sorry, without the Explorer, obviously. This is the API host, Phoenix22 open platform.fintechgalaxy.com, and then at the end you put the rest of the URL. And here you can put headers for some endpoints. You see the typical successful response. This is what you can expect as a response from the API. That's the JSON, an example JSON, possible errors that you can get, connector methods. Maybe we'll come back to that later. And yeah, and you can directly click on the get button here, and it will perform an actual API call and print the response from the API here in the API Explorer. So now you have a real response, and this gives you an overview of all the banks which are registered on this sandbox. So there's a number of banks as we said already, we have localized data, so it's from different countries. So we have Egyptian bank, Saudi Arabian bank, Jordan, Bahrain, and yeah, a couple more. So you can also create your own banks if you want, but let's keep that for a bit later. Right. So yeah. So good. So this was a very simple endpoint. Get banks. You don't need to be authenticated. So let's briefly talk about authentication, because for most of the endpoints, you will obviously need to be authenticated. Right. So there's basically there's a number of approaches to this. The Sandbox supports multiple authentication mechanisms. So we have OAuth 1, we also have OAuth 2 by external authentication providers with OpenID Connect, and we have a direct login. So before you can use it, obviously you need to have a user account, and so you can, and we highly recommend that you do that. You just sign up here on the Sandbox. So here you can create yourself an account. Just you put in your details, and when you click sign up, you immediately are logged in with your new user account. And so let me just briefly log in here with my own user account. 1 second. So now I'm logged in as my own with my own user account, and the next step would be to get an actual API key. So when you're logged into the portal page, you go to get API key, and this is where you register your apps. This is where you get a token, which you can then use in API calls to make authenticated API calls, right? So you fill in this form, very brief form. You just put your application name here. If it is a web application, you can or you should put your redirect URL. You don't have to, but you can also just put localhost here, just for testing purposes. It's not required. Well, you put your email here, then you will get also your data in an additional email, and put a brief description of your application. That's all it takes. And then when you click register your consumer, then immediately after that, you get your API key. So you have your consumer ID, again, the details that you provided. And here's your consumer ID, consumer key and consumer secret, and some endpoints you can use. With this information, you can make actual API calls. So these are keys, and you cannot use them directly in your authentication against the API. So I don't know how many of you already found out how to do that, but I'm going to show this to you real quick, how to get a token for making authenticated API calls. So this is the one thing you cannot do via API Explorer for security reasons. So this is not included in the API Explorer. So you need to use a REST client, for example, Postman, or you do it by yourself, like implement it by yourself. And I'm going to show you how to do this in Postman. So let me switch over to my Postman instance. Right. So I have this prepared here. So this is how the endpoint looks like. I will put that in the chat. So this is the endpoint for direct login, and we recommend that you use direct login because it's the easiest authentication mechanism. So you don't want to when you just want to get your ideas going and want to implement stuff and start making calls and so on and so forth. Yeah. Then you don't want to fiddle with OAuth implementation or like all the mechanics which are around there. So in a sandbox environment, it's very recommended to use just direct login because it's very easy. It's just one API call, which I'm going to show you, and then you get a token, and this you can use to make authenticated calls. Right. So so this is the endpoint you need to call, and then in the headers you have this default headers which come automatically, and this is the most important thing. Yes, a question in the chat. 1 second, please. Let me just finish this very quick. So, and here is the header, and here you put your username that you got from the from this page. So not from this page, sorry. This is your username that you registered at, your password, and then here you put your consumer key, and this is the string that you got here from the API key registration, right? So this is all it takes, and then when you click send, you will get a direct login token, and I'm going to show in a second how you can proceed with that. And let's get to this question. In data core, ask the question. Yes, please go ahead and ask the question.
Yes, please. First of all, I would love to thank you for this delightful presentation so far. I just want to ask a question about the API keys itself. What is the right purpose of it if we have like a B2B model business? I mean, are we getting in touch with the consumer himself, or?
Well, this is basically no. I mean, your customer, yeah, will obviously you do not want to your customer to get your API key. So this is something you as a developer of the app need to do. If you want to make calls to the API, and if you want to use the API for your app,
so it can give us like some direct calls with, for example, the financial sector with the banks.
Sorry, I don't know exactly what you mean. So
it's just like I still don't get the right purpose of these calls. I mean, the API calls for the growth of the application.
Well, this is if you want to call the API and you want to use the data and you want to use customer data, then you need to authenticate yourself against the API, right? Obviously, you need to log in as a user, which has the right permissions to access the data, and this is what you need an API key for. So this is what you need to put. So it's all REST. So you need to have your API token in the API calls. So if you want to, for example, if you want to get all the transactions of an account, you need to put your direct login token here in this header. So you need an authorization header in the call, and you need to put your direct login here. And this way, the API knows which user is calling.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, great. Great. So then let me just carry on. Right. So this is basically how you do it. So first you get an API key from the consumer registration, and then you put this here in the direct login in this one API call you need to do from an external client, and you put your username, password, and consumer key here, and you will get a direct login token. Another question? No. Okay, great. Good. So this API token you put in the headers of all calls after that, and you will make this call as the user you are registered with. Yeah, the user who gets the API key then is performing this API call, right? Okay. So let's go back to the API Explorer. And now that we have our direct login token, we can have a look at the more complex API calls. So right. So if I want to see all accounts use, okay. Sorry. First, before I go to that, there's two types of user accounts on this sandbox. One, one type is the type of the account that you create for yourself, right? So if you register as a developer and you create yourself a user account, then you can browse the APIs and perform, like, explore everything and find out. If you want to use the banking data which is on the Sandbox, right? So all the accounts and transactions and so on and so forth, we have a number of dummy users which we created, and only these dummy users have access to this data. So this is for security reasons, that like only these dummy accounts can access the data, and the data cannot be tampered with and cannot be manipulated. Right. So where do you find these dummy user accounts? If you go on the portal page, right to the bottom, there's API documentation. And this will, if you click there, this will throw you to a wiki page with some basic documentation how to use the Sandbox. And here is the list of dummy users you can use, right? So these are pre-made user accounts that we created on this Sandbox. Yeah, and these accounts, they have access to the banking data, right? So these are localized. We have some UK accounts. We have Egyptian accounts, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Bahrain here, right?
Daniel, sorry to disturb, interrupt. I think you were sharing the same screen. We're not back in the portal again.
Sorry. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I'm still on the Postman. That's right. Sorry for that. I'll switch right back here. So great. So again, sorry. So on the portal page, you can see it now, I hope. On the bottom, there's the link API documentation. And when you click this, it will point you to this. This is the wiki page where you have general introduction and documentation of how to use the Sandbox. And when you scroll down here is the dummy user accounts. So these accounts, they have access to the banking data. So what you do to make API calls using one of these accounts is the same as I just showed you with my own user or with your own user account. So you take one of these user account and the password, and you make this direct login call with, for example, Postman, and you get an API key, and this API key belongs then to this user, and with that you can make calls and get the data out of the Sandbox. Okay, right. Is that clear so far? Are there any direct questions to this?
I have a question, Daniel. So
yeah,
when you said for the use of the authentication by using the dummy user, is that something that we have to do every time we need to make a call? Or is it one-time login, you get authenticated, you get the key through Postman, and the process carry on when you're calling these APIs?
Yeah, you only need to do this once. So you do this. Okay, let me switch back to my Postman. So when you have your direct login token, this is valid for I think 90 days or so. Yeah, so it's plenty of time, enough time for this event. So this token you can use obviously in all following API calls. So you don't need to do the login and get the key all the time. Obviously. So once you have this token, you can put it in your header and send it all the time, and you make authenticated calls all the time. So you don't need to do this every time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, of course. Okay. So then let me switch back to not this one, to my browser. Okay, having said that, I would like to point you to some further documentation. Before we proceed here with the examples, I would like to show you that in the API Explorer, so you have, this is also a central point for documentation. And besides the resource stocks that you have for every endpoint, there's a glossary here, which you can click, and this will give you further documentation. So this should be also the first stop. If you have any questions or any trouble, you can visit the glossary and search for answers to your questions. So this has like many topics here, including direct login. Okay, this doesn't look so nice. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. So we need to fix this. I'm sorry. So you can see the text when you select it. Right. So this gives you we will fix that in a minute right after this session. So this gives you an introduction how to use direct login again. So you get your API key just as I just showed you. You authenticate. Here's the full URL. You make a post request here. You put this in your headers, the password and your consumer key that you got from the registration, and then you will get the token. Then you will get the token back, and you can make authenticated calls right after that. If you put the token in the headers like this: authorization, direct login token, and then your token here, right? So this is your gives further documentation and examples for all the endpoints which are there, and for all the topics sorted by topics and so on. So have a look at the glossary in case you have any questions first. Right. Okay. So yeah. So assuming that direct login is now, you are perfectly feasible and capable now of doing direct login and making authentic API calls. Let me switch again to my Postman, and let's do some. So if I want to see, so which accounts does the user have, right? So obviously when you register as a new user, you don't have any accounts, no? If you use one of the dummy users, you will want to know, so okay, which accounts are there? And there's an endpoint called get accounts at bank, right? So and this endpoint will just return all the accounts that there are, right? So, and for this, obviously, you need to make an authenticated call. So what I'm doing here, I'm putting my direct login token here in the authorization header. And when I click send, it will return the list of all accounts that my user has. So what I have chosen one of the dummy users, which is called Amir from Bahrain. So I did the direct login token. This is what I did using this user account. Username is amir.bh.01. So this is, I took this from the documentation page, including the password, which is also there. And then I clicked send, and I got the API, the direct the token here. And then I put this token into this variable here, and this is where the token goes. Yeah, and then I can click send and get the all the accounts, get the JSON response with all the accounts this particular user has access to, right? Okay, so how did I come to this? So let me switch back to API Explorer. So I want to get all the accounts, and the endpoint is called get accounts held. So this gives me all the this is the description of the endpoint that I just used. And so let me log on here real quick. So, and I'm Tesobe Daniel now. I don't want to be Tesobe Daniel because I want to use one of the dummy users. When I log out, and log out here as well. And then let me log in here with this dummy user that I was just using. And I log log in. Good. Now I'm logged in as Amir here in API Explorer, and I want to get all accounts held. This was my journey. So, and what I can do here in API Explorer, you have these pull down, these drop down menus here, and here this is populated with already with all the banks, for example, this user has access to, right? So if I click here and select this bank, then all URLs are already filled in with the bank that I selected here, right? So I can now easily try out this endpoint from API Explorer and get the same result as I just showed you in Postman. So this gives all the accounts this user has, right? Okay. Good. So another endpoint, so if I want to see the balance, so all the transactions, then let's find the endpoint for that. So get account balances, for example. So, and this will also, here is the bank is already populated here by this drop down, and I click on get, and yeah, I will get all the balances of all the accounts that I have access to, right? So this is one account. This is the account ID. This is the bank. There's a label, and this is my balance of this account, right? Okay, and all the other accounts as well, right? So, and this is basically how you can proceed and trying out all the endpoints, right? Okay. So when you want to use endpoints where you need to put an account, then you can also, in this pull down, you can also select one of these accounts that you want to work with, and it will fill in automatically in the URL. It will fill all the required fields. So, for example, let's see transactions. What kind of transactions are in there? Get transactions for account is the endpoint. And here's the URL. It's already populated. Here we need to put the bank ID. Then we need to put the account ID and transactions in the end. And then I can make the call right from here, and I will get the history of transactions for this account. Okay. So another quick question, please. Is there a question from Elzabeth?
Yes, sorry. Okay, regarding the reply, the response from the API, sometimes the account ID is labeled as just ID. Sometimes it's labeled as account _ ID. Is there a reason for this?
No, normally, no. If you have just ID, it means account ID. So we are looking at accounts, and when you get a response for accounts, then ID means account ID.
Okay, all good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let me show you briefly how to. So if you want to do a transaction, the procedure is as follows. You need to make a transaction request. So you need to tell the API that, okay, please do a transaction. And it's called transaction request because you can only request it because there will be internal checks if there's enough balance and if everything is correct and right. So you do a transaction request, and there's a number of types of transaction requests that you can do. And for this environment of this sandbox here, you use the Sandbox 10 endpoint, right? So all the others are special cases and mostly for production and other environments. So Sandbox 10 is the the type of request that you should do here. And when you click there, it gives you an introduction how this works, which fields you need to fill in, and so on and so forth. So you can have a read here. It also gives you some static foreign exchange rates here, so that you know how your values will be calculated when you send to different currencies. And yeah, and here's the actual endpoint you need to call. So this is the sending account. So this is what goes in the URL. So you put the bank ID, which is already filled in from this drop-down. Then the sending account, which is also populated here from the pull down. Then you need to specify the view ID. So let me say a few words about view ID. So we have different types of roles and permissions in Open Bank project, and for accounts we have something called views, and a view is some permission you can assign to someone. When you create an account, you are the owner, so you have the owner view, right? This is only the owner has this view and the permission on this account. So now when you want to grant access to someone else to your account, you can pick one of the views which are there. For example, there's an accountant view, right? So this would be someone who someone external who has a look at your accounts and can do what an accountant does, right? So but they can't do transactions and can't get money out of your account, basically, yeah. Similar to auditor, and there's a few other views, and you can create your own views if you want. But the general view, if you want to work with your own account, then you use the view of owner, and this is what you put here. So you replace the view ID with owner, and you're good to go. No? So other endpoints you can put, then you can use other views, for example. But if you want to do a transaction, obviously you need to have the permission that an owner has. Right. So that's the URL, basically. Everything you need to put in there. Then here in the headers, or in the body, that's post request. This is the recipient, right? So you need to know the bank ID of the recipient. You need to know the account ID of the recipient. As this is just a sandbox, obviously, so you can't send money to other accounts somewhere else. You need to have an account on this sandbox you send money to, right? Yeah, and then you put the currency and the amount, and you can put a description there, and yeah, and that's that already. And when you click, so I don't have any account here at hand at the moment, but when you click post, it will create a transaction request and perform the internal checks if everything is all right. Obviously, if you have enough balance on your account to make this transaction, if the currency is right, if everything works, and so on. And if the checks are passed, then the transaction is performed. If you keep the value of the transaction below 1,000, so this is how the sandbox is configured. So there won't be any, you don't need to have any other authentication here. So you don't need to have a 10 and some further authentication. So normally when you have more than 1,000 of the currency, then you need to also use some other endpoints to provide 10 and receive the 10 and send it back and so on. So to keep things simple, stay below 1,000, right? So then you will pass all the checks, most of the checks automatically, and the transaction will be performed. So keep this in mind. Just make the transaction below 1,000, and you should be all fine, and no further checks are required here. Yep. All right. So this is the response you will get back then. It will give you a summary of the transaction. Well, there's a number of things that could go wrong. Here you have the possible errors that you can see, and so on and so forth. Okay. Yeah, right. So I was talking about permissions and roles already. So we have these views that you can assign to accounts. There's endpoints for that. Here you can, in the view section, you can create a view as you want and view the view and make modifications to it. And yeah, so I mean, I think the best is that you just look around the catalog and find the endpoints that that are suitable and that you need, and then just play with them and try it out and see how you can implement your ideas with that. So as one of the themes of this hackathon is EKYC, know your customer. I'd like to point you to the to our KYC endpoints that we have on this sandbox. So there's a number of KYC endpoints you can use to enrich the customer information, right? So you can put additional documents, you can put media here like avatar pictures or even video clips or whatever you want. You can create statuses about the customer, and yeah. So these endpoints, definitely you should have a look at these if you want to work in this theme. So you can combine these information about the customer. You can create new fields if you want, and then in your app you can combine them with the history of transactions. And I mean, yeah, the sky's the limit. So everything's almost everything is possible here, and yeah, this is one thing which points me to the next type of permissions. I was already speaking about the views, and the other permission layer is entitlements. Entitlements are granted per user, and these are basically permissions. And for some actions, for some API actions, you need to have an entitlement. Yeah, so you need to have permission to do that. And you can, for example, if you want to add a KYC document, right, to an account, to a customer, then you need to have permission to do that. And normally, you when you register as a new user, you don't have this permission, right? So you need to request this. Okay, and this is how you can easily do it. So if you see you need a, if you perform the call without having the permission, then the response will be user is missing one or more roles, can add KYC document, right? So it replies, so you don't have the permission. And then in API Explorer, you can click on this button here. You need to fill in the bank. So this is per bank permission. So if you put the bank ID here and you click on request, it will submit a request. And yeah, well, we from the team will see that and will be able to respond to that. Having said that, I would kindly ask you to, if you need a permission, if you need an entitlement, please also ping us somewhere on Slack or drop us an email or whatever, and just say hi and say, okay, I have this user account, I need this entitlement, please could you grant it to me? Because otherwise it might slip through. We are not constantly monitoring all the entitlement requests that are coming in. And so if you need an entitlement, then just let us know, and we will be able to grant this to you. Yeah. All right. So yeah, so that's the EKYC theme. The other themes are digital lending and digital financial awareness. Well, just a few recommendations for digital lending. Obviously, you would want to probably look into the transaction endpoints, maybe also the card endpoint, so you can create cards which can be used to lend money or something. Yeah, but just be creative with that, right? So for the digital financial awareness theme, also, I mean, yeah, just browse around and check accounts and cards and transactions and history of transactions and all this. And I'm sure you will find endpoints which you can work with. So in case you don't find what you need, there's also, we have a feature on this sandbox in Open Bank project, which is called dynamic endpoints and dynamic entities. So I won't go too much into detail here, but these are basically endpoints, API endpoints, which you can use to create new endpoints, right? On the fly. So immediately when you create a dynamic endpoint, it will create a new API for you, which you can use, right? So, so if you have an idea in mind, if you want to create something which isn't there already, then you can create it by yourself, basically, right? So if you click on the section here in the API Explorer, it gives you an introduction. So what you need to do is you need to call this endpoint, dynamic endpoint, and then in the body you put the swagger of your endpoint, right? So use swagger to write the definition of your endpoint, and here is already a brief example. So this creates an endpoint for a pet store, right? So if you want to create an endpoint for a pet store, you can put all the definitions here, how the API should look like, and it will create it for you on the fly, and you can start using it, right? So it will immediately show up in the API Explorer here. You will have the endpoint here in the list. You can call it. You automatically have the entitlements to use it and to change it. And yeah, so but I would suggest that, I mean, the time is limited and passing by fast. So if you want to do that, just get in touch and reach out and describe your need, and then we can give you support with that, right? Okay. So yeah, I mean, this was probably quite a lot already. That's basically more or less what I wanted to show you and talk you through. So yeah, you're very welcome to ask your questions right now, if you have any, and we can take it from there and explain a bit more. But again, as I said, if you need anything, if you need support during your journey developing your app, then always ping us on Slack, and we will be there, and the team will be there to support you with that. But anyway, are there any questions right now?
Hi, everyone. Anyone has any question for Daniel? I think because they were breaking you up in the middle, so they kind of find it helpful. All right.
Yes, sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
So I just asked you on Slack, but I'll ask you right here. So one of the main functions we need is getting recurring payments of a user. So what subscriptions he's currently paying for, like Netflix or such. I'm the one who asked you about the Polish API, by the way. So browsing the API the documentation, we only found that the Polish API is the only one that has support for recurring payments, getting data about them, or which recurring payments a user have. So what we needed to know is, does the Polish API can access accounts, get information accounts in the UAE?
Yeah, I think I already very briefly responded to you. So the Polish API, the endpoints that we have on the sandbox, like, okay, Open Bank project supports all different kinds of standards. So we have the OBP standard, and we have the most popular open banking standards, Berlin Group, UK Open Banking, and so on. And also the Polish API, as you pointed out correctly. But only the OBP endpoints are connected to the data here in this case. So all the other standards that we have, UK and French, the STAT, Polish and Australian, they are not connected to the data. So you can work with these endpoints. You can use them and make calls and so on and so forth. But you won't be able to access the banking data which is there. So if you want to be if you don't need the data there, and then you can also play with these other standards. But to get your IDs going, it's really recommended that you use the OBP endpoints here. Yep.